you want to say hi to the camera? Do you want to say hello? Yeah. I got you, baby. I got you. Alright, hi everyone, and welcome back to another video with me and little Kyra being here. I'm in a different place today. I'm on my living room floor just because I'm moving around some stuff in the office, so I don't have a lot of space in there at the minute, so I thought I'd bring you out here with me today. And because of that, you might hear Kyra sniffling around a little more than usual. So, what are we talking about today? It has to do with sport, which isn't very me, is it? I know nothing about sport. I never have. I never will. The last time I worked a regular office job, I was basically an outcast because I didn't watch the Olympics at all. So I had nothing to say in their conversations and everyone thought I was really, really weird. I'm just not a sport person. The last time I watched sport was over a year ago when my partner's friends invited me to watch a football match at the pub, and me and him went and we were like, yeah, look at them kick that ball. And that was like all we could add. But we enjoyed spending time with people. That was the important thing. The point is, on the topic of sport, I have absolutely nothing to contribute to the conversation. Up until a couple of days ago, the name Harrison Butker? Butker? But I don't think I've ever heard his name said, actually. This guy right here, the name meant absolutely nothing to me. Apparently he's an athlete. He does something with balls for a team that I've also never heard of called the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they play American football. He does something with kicking a ball. Don't quote me on that though, I don't know. But none of that is actually relevant to this conversation. What is relevant is that the people at Benedictine College, a conservative Catholic school in Kansas, trusted him enough to deliver a speech at one of their graduation ceremonies, and during that speech, he said some of the stupidest things I have ever heard a human say. We're going to be talking about that speech today, listening to it, and critically analysing it. Just to warn you, it is ridiculous. He's misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, and just basically a bit of an idiot throughout the whole thing, so be prepared going in. Let's listen to this together.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, I would like to start off by congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today. I'm sure your high school graduation was not what you had imagined, and most likely neither was your first couple years of college. By making it to this moment through all the adversity thrown your way from COVID, I hope you learned the important lessons that suffering in this life is only temporary.
Okay, so the last line is a little odd, but overall, not a bad start to a graduation speech, right? It seems pretty normal. My graduation from Warwick was an embarrassingly long time ago, probably coming up to 8, 9 years ago, something like that. So I don't even remember exactly who gave the speech at mine, but I'm almost certain that it started almost exactly like this, minus the lines about COVID and high school graduations, obviously, because COVID wasn't a problem back then, because I'm old, and we don't do high school graduations in the UK. UK, come on, come say hi. Come say hi. Why are you anxious? Is it because it's hot? Yeah? It's very, very warm here today, and this little one is struggling a little bit with the heat, aren't you? It's okay. Do you want to go lay on your cooling mat for a bit? Yeah? You could do that if you wanted.
As a group, you witnessed firsthand how bad leaders who don't stay in their lane can have a negative impact on society. It is through this lens that I want to take stock of how we got to where we are and where we want to go, as citizens and yes, as Catholics.
Now, even though I'm an atheist, I don't really have an issue with people viewing things through the lens of their own religion. I mean, why would I? It really, really doesn't bother me in general. Plenty of people do amazing, wonderful things in the name of or inspired by religions of all kinds all across the world. If someone wants to think of themselves, hey, as a Catholic, Muslim, Sikh, Wiccan, insert any other religion here, how can I use my religion's beliefs, teachings, history and community to do the most good in the world, to be kind to others, to help others, to understand others, then I think that's wonderful. I completely encourage it, I completely support it. Why would I or anyone else ever have a problem with that? But what I will never ever be okay with is when people justify hate and harm by saying, but look, I'm just looking at it through the lens of my religion. I'm just following my religion. You can't call out the harm I'm doing because I'm just helping people in the name of my religion. I don't like that. I'm never going to be okay with that. And that's what I feel Harrison goes on to do in the rest of this speech. And it's absolutely not okay. Is it, my little anxious one? Okay, I got you. I got ya. Do you want to go have a lie down while I'm filming? Yeah? Come on, let's get your cooling mat out. Pop it in your bed, yeah? Come on, let's go do that. Sorry. Obviously, this is a new little setup for her, temporary as it is, and it's really warm today, so she's just a little anxious. Bless her. So there's actually an interesting little post that I found on the Harvard Political Review website titled "Why Your Religion is Not an Excuse to Discriminate." Fantastic already, right? And it's linked below if you want to give it a proper read for yourself. It is written by Aidan Scully, who is far more articulate than me and covers a lot of areas like the law, which I just don't have expertise in myself. But he summarises at the end of this article: as long as we say that bigotry is permissible so long as it comes from a deeply held religious belief, we cannot be surprised when LGBTQ plus people are harmed. Religious motivations are our principal oppressor. So when we condemn homophobia, unless it's religiously motivated, what are we actually condemning? And that's something that I want you to think about as we go through this video. It doesn't matter that he's saying all this in the name of religion because of his religion to a bunch of other religious people. The fact is that what he's saying is still harmful. So back to the speech, and Harrison goes on to talk a lot about COVID and how terribly it was handled and how awful leaders have been, blah, 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 blah.
While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues.
Now, strangely, no, he's not talking about how idiots like Donald Trump had no idea what they were talking about and didn't understand the seriousness of the situation or the need for lockdowns, social distancing, and vaccines. He's talking about people who wanted those things in place to save lives. He's criticising the people who actually took actions to save lives. It's kind of ironic because we can't forget that while Harrison will go on in this speech to complain about life-saving measures during lockdown and complain about women doing things in general, the actual fact of the matter is that it was actually mostly the female leaders around the world who navigated COVID in the best possible way for their countries. The countries that had the best outcomes of the whole situation were primarily the ones with female leaders. As Marianne Seichard writes in her fantastic book, The Authority Gap, which I thoroughly recommend, she says, "We all saw during the COVID-19 pandemic how much more successful, on average, female leaders were than male ones. Globally, women only held 7% of government leadership positions, yet 4 of the top 10 countries which dealt best with COVID-19 were led by women." One example of this is New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who implemented strict, very, very strict lockdowns, quarantines, and closed borders, which, yes, at the time was pretty hard for the people there. I know I had a few friends living in New Zealand at the time. But it was also one of the most successful strategies for saving lives and getting life and the economy, as we knew it, back to normal as quickly as possible. New Zealand handled things brilliantly. Jacinda Ardern handled things brilliantly. Obviously not perfectly, but pretty damn good. Harrison seems to think no further than, well, me and my friends were inconvenienced for a while, so all the leaders won in lockdown were bad. Boo-hoo. He really thinks no further than surface level and how things affect him personally. I mean, he's in some ways not wrong though. America and other countries did have poor leadership and bad policies, just in pretty much the opposite way to what he thinks. He then goes on to list of things which have pretty objectively improved the quality of life for millions of people and says that these are bad policies stemming from degeneracy and disorder.
Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder.
Look, you know my feelings on abortion and the importance of pro-choice laws and policies, and if you don't, I have many, many videos on the topic. I recommend my one debunking the LeBrant's terrible anti-choice documentary and a few others like that. I'll link them in the source document. But on top of that, one thing I will never understand is people who are against things like IVF and surrogacy. I thought so many conservatives and stuff wanted more people to have kids, and yet they seem against people actively wanting them being able to make that choice. I think this is what it comes down to. They don't seem to want people to be able to make their own choices. They want to force choices on people, which is not fair. They don't really care what the outcome of that choice is or what the thing is that people are doing. They just want people to be forced into doing it. Like, they want people who don't want kids to be forced to have them against their will, but they don't want people who do want kids to be able to have them. Explain to me how any of that makes sense. How can anyone be against people who actively want children and are taking every step they can to purposefully be a parent and preparing in every way they can? How can you look at that and say it's a bad thing?
Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it.
Well, clearly, since Harrison here is a Catholic and he's still a bad person. What I find quite funny here is that this particular topic is something that I've spoken about a lot in my past videos, but kind of in the opposite form, if that makes sense. So in summary, Harrison is saying you can call yourself a Catholic, but if you don't align exactly with my beliefs, then you're not a real Catholic. You're not good enough. And in some ways, it's a twist on the no true Scotsman fallacy, sort of ish. On the other hand, I see it from the other side all the time. So I always try my best in videos with varying degrees of success to try and critique specific points people are making rather than anything inherent about the person, you know? Like, it's good to be like, yes, your point is wrong here because of this, this, and this, rather than your point is wrong because you have stupid hair. You know what I mean? Often when I talk about a lot of fundamentalist religious people, you know what I'm trying to say, or just people in general who are religious and doing harmful things in the name of religion, I will try and make sure the focus is on like, well, this person's belief is this, and this causes these actions, and I believe this is wrong because of this, even if they're using religion to justify it. Now, to me, this doesn't mean I'm critiquing that religion as a whole. That doesn't mean I'm critiquing everyone in that religion. I'm just critiquing that specific person's specific interpretation of that religion to do something harmful, you know? But I pretty much always, this is like a guarantee, get people in the comments saying things like, well, how dare you criticize this whole religion? This is prejudice against this and this and this religion, and we're not all like this. The ones doing the harmful things, they're not really part of my religion. They're not real Christians, Muslims, this, whatever, you know. And again, it's like a no true Scotsman fallacy. I think we have to remember that you can critique people using a religion in a harmful way or doing harmful things in the name of a religion without critiquing that entire religion or everyone else in that religion. It doesn't matter if you think someone is a true member of a religion or not. The fact is that they are doing something harmful in the name of a religion or because of a religion. You know what I'm trying to say? And that's the harmful thing. So in summary, where Harrison is saying these people are Catholic, but they aren't harmful enough, so they're not real Catholics, boo. I get people saying, no, these people are too harmful. They're not real Catholics. Stop criticizing them. Or us, or religion in general. Don't bring religion into this at all, you know. The two arguments are kind of like different sides of the same coin. And neither is helpful or right or wrong. We need to acknowledge that religions as a whole are neither all good or all bad. They just are. And it comes down to how each person uses them and uses them to influence their life as to whether they can cause harm or not. When we kind of have these conversations, it doesn't matter if you believe someone is a real insert religion here or not. What matters is that we ask the questions like, but what is the consequence of what they're saying and doing, and how can we understand why they're saying and doing this in an attempt to help them stop hurting people? It's important that we bring religion into it to understand why they're saying it, but it's not helpful to sit here and argue whether they're a real member of that religion or not, because at the end of the day, they're still using it as justification, and that's something we need to address. That makes sense? All that said, Harrison is wrong. Yes, you can absolutely be Catholic and pro-choice because millions of Catholic people are. He then tells people to stop being nice and start being brave, which I guess is his way of saying, don't be afraid to be cruel and push people towards suicide.
But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice.
Look, I get my suicide comment might have sounded hyperbolic there for a second, but it's really, really not. Harrison is talking about things like not allowing people bodily autonomy, not allowing people to express their sexuality or gender identity, not allowing people to just be themselves and be happy and live a fulfilling life. These are all things which do absolutely, unequivocally increase the likelihood of poor mental health, self-harm behaviours, and suicides. There's a great little summary of this from the Trevor Project, which again is linked in this video's description, or source document in the description, which talks about how people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, especially teenagers, have much higher rates of suicide and attempted suicide. They say that the minority stress model suggests that the experiences of LGBTQ plus based victimization and the internalization of these experiences and anti-LGBTQ plus messages can compound and produce negative mental health outcomes and increase suicide risk amongst LGBTQ plus individuals. They go on to point out that other reasons for this increase in risks of suicide and self-harm all stem back to essentially homophobia and transphobia, increased physical harm and bullying from others, rejection from parents, family and friends, regular discrimination, being pushed into conversion therapy and so on. It's not a matter of... People say that because there's a correlation between being a part of the LGBTQ plus community and suicide and self-harm and depression and poor mental health and so on, they seem to think that that means there's something wrong with being gay or being trans or whatever. That's not the case at all. The causal link isn't that. The causal link is to do with the discrimination faced by the LGBTQ plus community. That's what causes the poor mental health. We know this because study after study after study has proved it. It's not being part of the LGBTQ plus community that puts people at risk, it's the lack of acceptance, and that is absolutely not okay. So please remember that it might sound hyperbolic on my part, but that is what Harrison is advocating for here. He is actively encouraging people to engage in discriminatory behaviour, which is directly harmful to the mental and physical health of millions of people.
As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic.
No.
The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I'm sorry, but you can't just say crap like this and not justify it. The tyranny of diversity, like what the hell does that even mean? Tell me what is so terrible and oppressive about different kinds of people simply existing. The fact that he feels so oppressed by the mere existence of other people displays to us what a weak, fragile little boy with no self-esteem he is. Imagine being so pathetic that you feel like you're being oppressed simply by other people being included. There's that famous quote, I can't remember the exact wording, but something about how equality can feel like oppression to those who basically spent their lives gaining at the expense of others. Other people simply existing are causing him to say, wait, because all of these excessive privileges I've had in the past are being reduced ever so slightly, that must mean I'm being oppressed. And it's just kind of pathetic. He then goes on to complain about bad priests and bishops and yeah, like any profession in the world, there are bad people in these groups, in any group, in any belief system, in any place, there are bad people. But what I find odd is what Harrison complains about as being bad. I would have thought that within places like the Catholic Church, the bad people would be the ones, abusing children, abusing their positions of power, potentially grooming people, hurting them, all that kind of thing. However, instead of focusing on them, Harrison decides it's best to shame priests who do terrible, terrible, terrible things like accepting people for who they are or having dogs. It's very strange. I feel like Harrison's priorities are so warped that if he was a cartoon villain, everyone would be complaining that he was, poorly written and unbelievable and his motivations made no sense. And then this whole stupid part of this rant is ended with a not-so-subtle dig at Taylor Swift, of all people.
And in searching for this, they let their guard down and become overly familiar. This undue familiarity will prove to be problematic every time because, as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt.
Now, I'm just going to say this before we go any further. I don't hate Taylor Swift. I don't dislike her at all. I made a silly throwaway joke in, a video 2-3 videos back about her karma as a cat flexing like an acrobat lyric or something like that being a bit silly and a bit stupid. But that doesn't mean I hate her. But her oh my god, her fans are insane. So many people came for me for that. I got, whole essays from people telling me I was, a horrible, nasty bitch because I didn't like that one particular lyric. It was a whole thing like that. So I will say this here. I quite like Taylor Swift's music. There are 10, 15, maybe 20 of her songs I genuinely really like. I think they're fun to sing to and dance to, and it's all just pretty fun, I think she makes great pop music. I don't think she's the lyrical genius that everyone makes her out to be, because I think she relies too heavily on people knowing stuff about her personal life, and she tries to make it more about ooh, how many references to my personal life and the gossip around me can I throw into a song, rather than actually writing lyrics that kind of connect with people on a more, I don't know, a more general level, if that makes sense. I feel her lyrics are a bit like self-indulgent rather than aimed at connecting with people. But lyrics aside, but it's pop music. I don't think it necessarily has to be deep. I think it can just be fun. She doesn't have to be a good lyricist to be making good pop music. And, you know, new album aside, because that one is boring, she does know how to write a damn good, catchy pop song. And she does work ridiculously hard. She can sing and dance and perform better than most people in the world, myself included, because I have none of those skills. And she is a great business person. She knows how to market herself. I think she has achieved a hell of a lot, and those achievements should not be downplayed. Harrison downplays them. She makes a good enough point for him to feel happy enough quoting one of her song lyrics in an attempt to be funny and connect with his audience, but his not-so-subtle misogyny means that he can't bring himself to actually credit her directly. He won't even say her name, and it's pathetic. He won't call her by her name or acknowledge her creativity, her achievements, her success. Instead, he chooses to belittle her by simply calling her my teammate's girlfriend. It is purposefully disrespectful to undermine her success and her autonomy and her individuality by referring to her only in relation to her relationship with another man. Harrison refuses to acknowledge her as a woman and an individual in her own right. He only sees her as an extension of another man. He respects the man that she's an extension of, but not her directly. I'm sorry, but she's not just some guy's girlfriend, and that's not even the capacity in which you're quoting her. You're quoting her because she is a lyricist, she is a songwriter, she is a public figure. That's why you're quoting her. You could at least bother to acknowledge her as such. It would be like if I started telling you about, like, something some little old lady said or did that my friend met once, and I'm telling you this story, I'm like, yeah, and then she did this, and then she did this, and you're like, oh, okay. And it turns out I'm talking about, like, Queen Elizabeth or something, you know? It's not really just some little old lady my friend met once, is it? No, she has a bit more, or had a bit more power and influence than that. Regardless of what you think about the monarchy, I'm not a fan in general. I wouldn't be surprised if seeing the success and the strength of women like Taylor Swift genuinely intimidates Harrison. I really, really believe it does. Mary Ann Siegehart points out that women have come a long way in the past few decades. Society is far more equal than it used to be. Many men have embraced this, but a toxic few are fighting back vituperatively. They want women who speak to be silenced, put back in their place. It is dangerous to be in possession of both an opinion and a vagina these days to lay claim to authority. Although, let's remember, not all women have vaginas. Just throwing that out there. If anything, the more authority women win, the more violent is the backlash. Women who are assertive or dominant or independent are the most likely to be harassed. And that is so true. As a woman online, I have absolutely found this. As women, we just can't win. I can think of 10, 20, 30, 40 male or male-presenting YouTubers who have this whole thing online where they're kind of arrogant, stuck up. They're like, ooh, my opinion's always right. And people love it about them. They praise their confidence, their ability, and so on. But as a woman, if you downplay your intelligence and skills, then you might come across as more likable, but people underestimate you and they talk down to you and they act like you're stupid. They don't realise how smart you are or, you know, the knowledge that you have on certain things. But over the years, I've become a lot more comfortable in myself and willing to admit, you know what, I am a damn intelligent person, more intelligent than most, especially academically speaking and my academic achievements and so on. Like, I've said this before, and I'm quite a bit older now, but, like, my A-level grades were some of the best in the country. For my undergrad degree, I went to what at the time was the best business school in Europe. I'm currently studying for a second degree in my spare time, in which, over the entire course so far, I've dropped a total of 1 mark. I'm constantly learning and growing and pushing myself to know more and understand more and discover more, and I have a hell of a lot of achievements, academic and otherwise, and I'm kind of tired of downplaying that. And I don't think I should have to hide it or pretend it doesn't exist or pretend I'm not as smart as I am, because I am. But anytime I mention it online or even, like, reference it, or, like, I don't even have to, like, outwardly say, oh, I'm smart. I just have to talk about something I'm interested in. And the amount of people who call me arrogant, pompous, stuck up, I get called a stuck up bitch is one I get quite a lot. And it's kind of rough to see, because I never see men being called the same things for speaking about themselves in the same way. Absolutely never. And I think what I find the most sad is when women are the ones doing that name calling, when they call me pompous and arrogant and a stuck-up cow, stuck-up bitch, but like all that sort of thing. Because I don't think it's their fault. I think it's a product of internalized misogyny. As women, we have been constantly told our whole lives that a good woman, a likable woman, or should I say girl? Because, you know, we're never women, are we? We're just girls. We're just silly, silly little girls, or we should be. But the good ones are quiet, meek, humble. And so we instantly judge anyone who isn't those things, who is actually self-assured and isn't afraid to say, you know what, I have some damn big achievements and I've done some good things in my life. I have worked damn hard. We see that and we think, oh my god, what a bitch. I know, because I used to struggle with the same problem in my early 20s. It has taken a hell of a lot of work to change those implicit thinking patterns to be a little bit more logical, you know? So what I want to say to you is, especially if you're a woman watching this and you think I'm an arrogant bitch, you think I'm a stuck-up cow, whatever names you want to call me, stop it and instead focus on yourself. Am I really an arrogant bitch? Or are you also a pretty flippin' amazing woman? Am I arrogant? Or are you also strong, smart, intelligent, creative? Have you also achieved some damn amazing things that you should be shouting from the rooftops? Maybe, instead of putting women like me down for celebrating ourselves, you should be shouting about yourself a little bit louder so we can all celebrate you too. That's what I want in the world. I want women to be boosting each other up and, you know, that's what I want in the world. That's the change I'm powering through to push towards. I want women to feel good about themselves, to speak up for themselves, to say, you know what, I am pretty damn amazing. I want you to do that too. To bring this back to Harrison though, his message is clear. Women are only allowed a voice if it passes through a man first. He cannot bring himself to say, this successful, talented woman once said this. Instead, he says, well, this woman I know said this thing, but I'm only going to define her in relation to a man I know and respect more than her, and will only quote her by taking her completely out of context. Because we all know Taylor would not agree to any of this stuff that he's saying in this speech. She would not want her quote used in this way. Everything he says and does here is dripping with contempt for her and all women, and it's horrifying to see.
We must be intentional with our focus on our state in life and our own vocation. And for most of us, that's as married men and women.
I mean, sure, yeah, a lot of people still get married, but marriage rates have been steadily dropping for a while now, and I just think in general more and more people are realizing that marriage isn't for them, myself included. So honestly, this bit from Harrison here feels, like many things he says, kind of pointless and narrow-minded if we're being honest. This is followed by minutes and minutes more of him hating on bishops because they aren't willing to expose themselves to leprosy anymore. And then just a very verbose way of him saying, stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane for 4 whole minutes. Can he just stay in his lane and keep kicking a football instead of spreading this nonsense, please? This is then followed up by some not subtle at all transphobia and homophobia, which we all know is not okay. The context here is that apparently this college was critiqued for saying something, I don't know, I mean, it's probably important, but it's not necessarily important to what we're going to discuss here. And Harrison's like, this should be met with pride. And then this.
Those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him.
Oh, look, a reference to Pride Month and how being queer is a sin. What an edgy man. So witty and funny. It's just pathetic, really, isn't it? You know, if I was a pettier person, now might be a good time to quote Taylor Swift and, you know, mention her by name. You know, maybe I'd quote something like some of her lyrics from You Need to Calm Down, like, why are you mad when you could be glad? Or a simple, shade never made anybody less gay. They would be relevant here. Although if I was really, really petty and I wanted something very specific to Harrison and who he is, maybe I'd quote Taylor Swift in saying, you are somebody that we don't know. But I'm not that petty. But seriously, can you imagine working your whole life playing a sport that apparently you love and having a family only for your legacy to become that stupid homophobic misogynist that everyone's laughing at? I'd pity him if he wasn't doing such harmful things to people. He then tells graduates that they can only find true happiness by staying in their lane, that phrase again, which is exactly what oppressors and cult leaders often tell the people that they're oppressing, isn't it?
Being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find true happiness and peace in this life.
Not because it's actually to these people's benefit, but because it stops them standing up to those oppressing them. Basically, he's trying to say to women and queer people, you stay down, shut up, be quiet, let us cis white men be in charge, yeah? Shh. Then, and this is the really stupid bit, because it's a graduation ceremony, he decides to undermine the achievements of literally half the people in the room by telling these women that this day, their graduation day, something that they have worked hard for years for and should be feeling proud of, and it is something huge to celebrate for them. He says, well, it's actually not worth anything, is it? Well done, but you shouldn't have done it, yeah? You won't need it, now get back in the kitchen.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
Look, I'll say it again, he really is just intimidated by strong, intelligent, successful women, isn't he? He is pathetic. And again, normally I'm all about critique the statements, not the people, but in this case I'll make an exception because he's pathetic. He simply cannot allow a woman to achieve anything without putting her down and saying she needs a man alongside her. It really is like he can only view women as an extension or property of men. It's ridiculous. Look, I know I personally don't want marriage or kids, so that has pretty much always been the last thing on my mind, both at my own graduation and on every other day in my life. But even I am aware that there are plenty of people out there who do want it all. Education, career, family, hobbies, relationships, giving back to the community, all of that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If a person wants to do that, they should be absolutely able to. But even the people who want marriage and kids and all that sort of thing, you can't make every achievement in their life about men. So a woman wants to pop out a bunch of babies. That doesn't make the college or university degree she has any less meaningful, her achievements at work any less meaningful. They can both be meaningful in her life. But he has to turn it round to like, ooh, look, you worked hard for this thing, but have you ever thought about who's going to be sticking their penis inside you? Not to mention the fact that all of this is incredibly disrespectful to the women in the room who don't want any of this because they're, I don't know, child-free, infertile, gay, asexual, anything. Literally any of the reasons people might not want this. Can you imagine if someone came to one of his football games and, I don't know, he'd just won some big, I don't know what they do in football, is it tournaments? Or I don't know. A big competition. Can you imagine if someone interviewed him after like the match or whatever and they were like, oh, Harrison, good job, mate, but stop celebrating now. It's not really worth it, is it, you silly boy? Just think about getting some sperm stuck up inside you, yeah? That's a good lad. Quiet now. Shh. It's disrespectful and it's not appropriate. Harrison then goes on to prove he has to disrespect and put down every woman he knows, including his own wife, who I really, really feel sorry for. I hope she's okay.
I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother.
Yes, because a woman couldn't possibly be anything without you, could she? She couldn't possibly have been happy or fulfilled without you in her life, or a man in her life. He literally clearly only views her as an extension of himself, and it's gross. It'd be one thing if she was the one saying this. Like, I mean, I would be a little concerned about her and her well-being and be like, well, are you sure you feel this way? But ultimately, who am I to argue with someone else's personal experience? And I would be fine with him saying, my life did not truly begin until I became a father and a husband and father, whatever. But for him to publicly say this about his wife is honestly kind of a bit scary and worrying. Like, I'm sure she is a great mother and a great partner and all that, but that doesn't mean she was just sat around stagnating before she met you. Just like any individual, she was almost definitely achieving things, learning things, growing, enjoying her life, becoming the person she is today before she met and married him. Like, she can only be a great mother now because of the life she led before she had a kid, and all that taught her and helped her grow and learn. And to dismiss all of that is honestly disgusting and dehumanizing. To dismiss a person's entire life until you turned up as being not really real, kind of worthless, didn't begin until I was here. It's disgusting. So Rachel Lennon writes in her book Wedded Wife, A Feminist History of Marriage, great book by the way, that for centuries and in diverse cultures around the world, women's opportunities and obligations were dictated by the choice to become a wife. The pressures surrounding the decision of whether to marry, and if so who, was enormous. Until a century ago, the choice would likely inform their work and career and determine the home and community in which they lived. But she also points out that the decision of whether to marry today is pretty much unrecognisable from the one faced by our ancestors. Waves of feminists and activists have fought to strip back the role of marriage in our lives to empower women with choice. Marriage remains a choice that we continue to actively shape, an imperfect institution that perhaps more women might one day choose to enter into by saying more than just yes. And that's the thing. And the book is fantastic, by the way. It looks about the history of marriage for all people from all different cultures, all different classes, all different time periods. Really, really interesting. But that's kind of the thing, right? So depending on what class you were in, marriage was more or less oppressive. But there is absolutely a case that for some women at some points in history, getting married was the only way to access basic human rights. Thankfully, that is not the case now. Thankfully, because of feminism, women have a choice, and it's not like our lives only start when a man picks us. While we can acknowledge that marriage may have historically offered some women some opportunities, it also took a lot of the opportunities away from a lot of people. Again, Rachel Lennon summarises this as the pressures on the decision to marry were sometimes overt, controlling, bullying, and coercive, involving physical and sexual abuse. Sometimes they were more subtle. For centuries, many working women found marriage the means to meet a need or achieve a new start, a barrier against hunger, the cold, and loneliness. For many, it provided the hope for a different life. So yeah, while historically marriage may have been a way out of tough times and a difficult life and poverty for a lot of women, that's not the case today. I don't believe that Harrison's wife was just sat around living on the streets, unable to provide for herself, with no food, no nothing, until she met him. I do not believe that was the case.
I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
I'm sorry, but this sounds so insincere, but other than that, can he not see why this is a problem? How can he sit there and talk about his talents, his skills, and so on, but say that his wife's only purpose is to prop him up? He doesn't speak about her skills, her life, her choices, her decisions. He doesn't speak about her as an individual, only an extension of him. Even for the people who want to get married and be parents, that doesn't mean that that is their one and only vocation in life. And even women who were forced to get married and have kids, that doesn't necessarily mean it was the right choice for them. Well, it wasn't even a choice for a lot of them. It doesn't even mean it was the right thing for them to do with their lives. It was wrong for a lot of people. Throughout history, so many women have been against marriage, and very vocally as well. So, just last month, me and Kieran went to Austria, and I have ended up since absolutely fascinated by Empress Elizabeth, who was mostly known as Sisi. And when she was just 15, Emperor Franz Joseph became pretty much obsessed with her and insisted on marrying her. She had no choice in the matter. She just had to go along with it. So by 16 years old, she was forced into this marriage with an emperor. She was suddenly the Empress of Austria. Everyone was looking at her constantly. She had all of this attention on her, all of these pressures on her, and this older man that she didn't even know was like, well, you're my wife now. Let's start popping out babies. She didn't want to be married. She didn't want these kids. She hated the public appearances and everything else that came along with being empress, and she ended up severely depressed for years. She was mentally an absolute wreck, bless her. She ended up being like institutionalized and being sent away for treatments and all sorts. And she did eventually start to get in a better headspace. Her mental health did improve. And when she was older, she actually had the courage to speak out about this. And she said, and I love this quote, "Marriage is an absurd institution. One is sold as a 15-year-old child and makes a vow one does not understand and then rues for 30 years or more and cannot undo it." She clearly was not happy. But I kind of love her for calling it out as an absurd institution. That was kind of iconic, you know? People didn't say that at the time. Women did not say that at the time. Women in her position could not say that at the time, and yet she did. She was also thoroughly against her own children being sold off into marriages, and she tried to stop it happening, but only managed to essentially save one of her daughters, who was at least allowed to choose her own husband, as opposed to being forced into some political marriage she didn't want. She absolutely would not have said that her greatest achievements in life were marriage or kids, or that her life didn't begin until she got married. She would have said her life ended, essentially, when she got married, you know? She was a woman with many, many interests and many passions in life and things she loved. And honestly, being a married mother wasn't really one of them. She was a keen painter. She loved traveling. Not really into it, but she did like hunting. She was very particular about her whole beauty regime, and she loved her clothes and that sort of thing. She was happiest in her life when she was able to get away from being an empress, from being a wife, from being a mother. She loved to just go out and be by herself, travel alone, see the world by herself. And again, I kind of love that for her. All of this was clearly reflected in their living arrangements too. So me and Kieran did a tour of both Schönbrunn Palace and the Imperial Apartments at the Hofburg, which were just two of the places that the Emperor and Empress lived. And when they first moved in, there was like a big shared bedroom for the Emperor and Empress, and then there like little sitting rooms and stuff off that and everything. And Cece, bless her, she was like, screw it, no. I want my own space. And she essentially took the master bedroom and said to the Emperor, you go get your own. And she kicked him out to some rooms further down, still very fancy, very nice. But she needed her own space. And I thoroughly respect that. I do not blame her. It's quite funny, as we were going around doing the tour, Kieran kept whispering, and like we were learning things about her, Kieran kept whispering to me and going, oh my god, she's you, this is you, was this you in another life? So the decor was very telling too in their rooms. So in both the Imperial Apartments and the Palace, they've essentially recreated the rooms as to what they looked like when Cece and Franz Joseph were living in them. And like Franz Joseph's office and bedroom were filled with paintings of his wife. There was a huge one by his desk. There were paintings of the kids on the wall, all this sort of thing. He was obsessed with her beauty. Like, it felt very superficial, but you know, he was obsessed with her. Whereas her bedrooms and her like sitting rooms and the rooms where she got ready in and everything, they were filled with the things she actually loved in life. She had portraits of her dogs on the wall. She had portraits of her favourite poets on the wall. She had paintings that she'd done put up and all sorts of stuff like that. So my point is, and Cece's not the only woman through history that this happened to, but she was a woman who, as a child, was essentially sold off into a marriage she did not really want and didn't really know how to comprehend or deal with. She was forced to have kids against her will. She was forced to do these things that a woman traditionally should do, and it made her miserable. It made her ill. It nearly ruined her. And the only way she finally found happiness and fulfillment was by pushing back against that and saying, no, there is more to me, and I want more for myself and my life. And I guess, again, to bring this back to Harrison, I think what I'm kind of asking and what I want to hear is, does his wife feel the same way as he's making out in this speech? Does she really feel that being nothing but a support to him and a vessel for popping out his children is her vocation? Or is she doing that because she has no other choice? Is she doing that because she wants to do those things, but she can also acknowledge that she wants to do other things in life? Is she doing it because she has had all her options presented to her and she thinks this is the right one? Or is she doing it because she's never known anything different? Why can he not talk about her as an individual? Why is it that she only has worth to him, not only like as an extension of him, but as a foundation to his achievements? I don't know, I guess it just really bothers me to see. A person is the sum of all their parts, not just how they serve others, you know? So next up, he basically describes how his wife is the typical sort of tradwife that we see being promoted by people like Soli Asario. I've spoken about her in a video before, if you want to go check that out.
She's the primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation.
Okay, so what he's saying is she does all the unpaid physical and emotional labor, and he just reaps the rewards and gets all the praise, right? You know, a lot of people like Harrison here, like Sully Asario in my other video, they spend a lot of time trying to convince us that being a trad wife makes them happy, happy, happy. Honestly, they're so happy. Our life is so right. Of course we're happy. And that is absolutely right because it's traditional, and you must honor tradition. But, as Rachel Lennon says, traditional is often the last defense of the indefensible. In talking about the tradwife movement, she says the movement romanticizes the good old days when married women stayed at home raising children, cooking, cleaning, and living lives financially dependent on men whose wages could support a whole household. It's easy to sentimentalize the past marriages to foster nostalgia for a vision glimpsed in childhood through early TV sitcoms or period dramas. It's too easy to forget the experiences of people who fell outside of these narratives. In the romanticized traditional, there is no recognition of relationships like mine or the exclusion and persecution of people expressing same-sex love. The idea of traditional marriage does not acknowledge the histories of people who lived beyond strict gender binaries. The realities of life shaped by racism, classism, and deep economic inequalities are ignored. She goes on to say we should be cautious of letting partial or idealized history be weaponized to take us backwards. It is our responsibility to keep pulling back the veil on these lives.
I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no.
Let me tell you, my jaw dropped when I first watched this. I was like, so this isn't even a woman who always dreamed of this kind of lifestyle and is fulfilling her own wishes. This is a woman who had other dreams and other goals, but for some unknown reason that we're not told, had to put them aside to prop Harrison up. You know, she might not regret having her kids, I'll give you that. She might enjoy spending time with them and homeschooling and all of that, but let's not assume that she has no regrets about her life at all, and that not fulfilling her goals and not fulfilling her passions is something that she's completely okay with and never wants to do again. I'm only going to believe that if I hear it convincingly from her. He then goes on to rant about how bad birth control is for no reasons, to have as many children as possible, blah blah blah. If you're infertile, then stop it, you're not allowed to have kids. It's just all very harmful and insensitive.
I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man, not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal. Heterodox ideas abound even within Catholic circles, for let's be honest, there is nothing good about playing God with having children, whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive. No matter how you spin it, there is nothing natural about Catholic birth control.
But you know, it's all very easy to say coming from a man who doesn't have to be the one getting pregnant. He's not the one putting his life at risk with every pregnancy, is he? I've spoken about this in depth in other videos. I would recommend my 2 on Carissa Collins if you want to find out more, so I won't say much now, but just how selfish do you have to be? If it's not your body, you don't get a say over what happens to it. It's that simple. If a person doesn't want to be pregnant or can't get pregnant because it's putting their health at risk or any other things, they should be able to choose that option every time to not be pregnant. If a person wants to be a parent but has fertility issues, then they should absolutely be able to become a parent. To say otherwise is damn selfish.
To the gentleman here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities.
Yeah, I have no idea who's saying this, but this is not something I've ever heard. I think this is just another idea he's pulling out of his bum to be angry against.
As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in.
Yeah, and I'm going to need some proof of this, please. I am. But also, come on, men set the culture. Yeah, maybe in some places at some times, because they were the only ones with any power, and they wouldn't allow women to have a say. But this does not mean it's true of everywhere in the world, of every time period, and this does not mean it should be true today.
This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation.
Yeah, no. I would argue that a large percentage of violence actually comes from men in the home. As a survivor of domestic violence myself, I can say for certain that the amount of violence I faced and that was in my life drastically decreased the moment I kicked that piece of crap out of my life for good.
Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the US, and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well.
Yeah, except this is absolute crap and he knows it. This isn't even true. I've quoted specific stats before, but you know which countries have the highest rates of femicide and domestic violence and just general violence against women? Countries like the Central African Republic, Honduras, Yemen, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and many others. And you know what those countries have in common? The women there don't have equal rights in pretty much any area. Women are not respected and not treated as people, and that leads to increased violence against them, and honestly, it leads to women being murderers and men not being convicted of it. These countries don't have high numbers of absentee fathers. They don't even have high numbers of divorce because these women are unable to ask for a divorce or get a divorce. What they do have is a lack of rights for women in general, a lack of respect for women. They have women being unable to get a decent education, women being unable to work for themselves, in some cases women being unable to have their own bank accounts, women being unable to live by themselves. In some countries, women can't even go to the doctor by themselves without a husband or father or brother being present with them. It's not absent fathers that cause violence, it's a lack of respect for women in general. It's a dehumanization of women in general. What causes an increase in violence in the world is not equality, it's not inclusion, it's not diversity. What causes an increase in violence is everything that Harrison is advocating for. Hate, disrespect, dehumanization, a lack of basic human rights.
Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better.
Okay, so to summarize, his advice here is men, do all the things, go work on your talents, woo, follow those dreams. Women, get back in the kitchen. It's pathetic.
Sadly, I'm sure many of you know of the countless stories of good and active members of this community who, after graduation and moving away from the Benedictine bubble, have ended up moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend prior to marriage. Some even leave the church and abandon God. It is always heartbreaking to hear these stories, and there is a desire to know what happened and what went wrong.
Oh no, how dare people be happy and content and live lives for themselves. How heartbreaking. And then he just goes on with a bit more like stay Catholic, blah, blah, blah. And then it basically ends there, the speech. That was a lot. It was only like 20 minutes and it felt like an absolute slog to get through because it was just so full of stupidity. Some people might think it was okay that he was speaking like this because of the audience he was speaking to, with it being a religious college. But as I said in the beginning, no. It doesn't matter who he's speaking to. It doesn't matter if there are other misogynists in the room, other homophobic and transphobic people in the room. The fact is that what he said is still harmful and wrong, and it's not okay, and it deserves to be publicly criticised. Overall, I find his speech short-sighted, narrow-minded, harmful, and honestly just a bit pathetic on his part, and he should be embarrassed. But at this point, I just want to pass the question back over to you and ask, what did you think of this? Do you have any thoughts? Let me know if there's any bits that I missed out or could have expanded on. And as always, check out my sources and a further reading list down in the video description. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys a lot. And here's my regular outro for you. I'm just going to jump in here now with a little bit of self-promoty pre-recorded nonsense because I always forget to do this. So if you did like this video, then please don't forget to leave a like or leave a comment or both because it really helps with getting more people to watch my videos. Feel free to share it around on social media if that's something you would like to do. And if you're new here, it would be absolutely wonderful if you would subscribe, or if you've been around a while, maybe just check you're still subscribed. That would be really great. Thank you. If you do want to see more of me, I do have a second channel where I post little vloggy bits, some little art bits, some makeup videos, just some little me ranting type bits, and also clips of some of my longer videos, so you can go check that out if you want. I also have a personal Instagram account, which is mostly me just posting my photography, my dog, my art, my friends, fun stuff like that. And if you'd like to support my channel, you can do that via either Patreon, where at the higher tiers you can get exclusive stickers and prints designed by me every 3 months, or you can go check out my merch where I'm adding new designs all the time. My most recent one is this really fun Colleen Hoover t-shirt, which is like, I survived Colleen Hoover and all I got was this stupid t-shirt. I love this design, it's so fun and it makes me giggle every time I wear it. I'm also at the minute putting together some Colleen Hoover bingo cards for you that you'll be able to download free off my website, which is quite fun. So the next time we do a Colleen Hoover video, you can download one of the cards, play along, and check off the Colleen Hoover tropes as we go. It's gonna be really fun. If you want to check out my website and keep an eye for when they're available, it's just racheloates.uk. There's also a bunch of my photography on there, my art, some little rambling posts about makeup, some book recommendations, a little bit of everything. And just go have a look around if it takes your fancy. But anyway, if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you so much, and hopefully I will see you again very soon. Bye.